Canada.
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.
Welcome to Hoopstorians. In 1995-1996, Jason Williams tells this story when he's on the Nets. Backup setter Yinka Dare asks, what does the C on Christian Laettner's jersey stand for in a game against the Timberwolves? And then Yinka asks, Caucasian. Jason hides his face under a towel to avoid seen laughing. And Benoit Benjamin, his other teammate, comes up to him and says, boy, that Yinka shirt, everybody knows Caucasian starts with a K.
I'm about to get mine and it's about time. Call us Grindhouse, everybody in a house grind. I'm just doing me, I ain't trying to outshine. Trying to kill my vibe is how you get outline.
So this day in NBA history. This is I had a couple options, but this one's too good. The largest trade in NBA history occurred. 13 players were traded for Kevin Garnett 17 years ago on this past Friday to the Boston Celtics. One of the most consequential trades, obviously, in NBA history. Starts, revitalizes the Celtics into a regular title contender and also arguably galvanizes the decision in 2010. So.
Yeah, I remember when that trade happened, people initially thought the Celtics were going to win like 53 games. That's what they were predicting them around. 53 games, and then we saw him explode to 66 on that. Nate, what do you think about that trade?
Oh, sorry. He cut out for a second there. What was the trade?
The Kevin Garnett trade happened 17 years ago Friday. The Celtics.
Oh, man.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, gosh. That trade ruined a lot of things for me because I did grow up a Lakers fan, and I was very much on team trade Andrew Bynum, bring in Kevin Garnett. Sorry, Bynum. I believe I listened to this pod and swearing was allowed, right?
Oh yeah. Hey, fuck yeah.
Ship his ass out, bring in Garnett. You got Garnett and Kobe, and oh my god. And so when he went to Boston, it was a bad day in my household. Well, but things ultimately worked out. The 2010 finals is the sweetest moment of my life. So, from sorrow comes sweet victory.
Yeah, I remember Garnett actually said in an interview with Dan Patrick in Sports Illustrated that because he had to waive his no trade clause. He was originally close to going to LA, but he wasn't sure what was going to happen with Kobe. He wasn't sure if Kobe was going to be there.
Well, there's also another package where they had him with like Marion and all of them talking about going to the Suns, and he was open to playing with Nash and
that would have been fun.
That would have been fun too. But hey, that was this day in NBA history. What's up, y'all? We have Nate from the Hoops Temple podcast here. We're going to be talking today about the best peaks of all time, and what better help with Nate? Because Nate, how far down do you go with your list on podcast? With your list of players, where you rank them all in order?
So, possible chairs, Aaron Schroeder, myself. If we have ranked out our top 480 players in all-time NBA history, I will say ours is a full career rankings, not just looking at peaks, but talking longevity, talking impact to the sport, or talking about contributions to winning. A lot more than just his peaks, but peak is definitely one of the driving factors because, let's face it, I'd rather have one amazing season than 3 seasons of being like an okay basketball player.
No, definitely. And just for so people get an idea of where your ranking are and where you're coming from, can you list your top 10 players and then tell me who's bringing up number 480?
Yeah.
The wide range of spectrum.
So I think top 10s can really be done I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do them. But there's 12 players that should be on everyone's top 10. For my top 10, and we go Jordan number 1, LeBron 2, Jabbar, Bill Russell, Tim Duncan, Shaq, Magic, Larry Bird, Kobe Bryant, and Steph Curry. with, unfortunately, Wilt Chamberlain and Hakeem Olajuwon hanging out there at 11 and 12. And then for 480, oh gosh, where did we end that up? 475 or 476 right now. I've got a Shane Battier.
Wow.
You know, just an amazing, inconsistent role player, a guy who helped out one of those Miami Heat teams, but also was a big piece of the Grizzlies runs. Just, you're never building a team around this guy. You're not winning a championship with him. But like, if you're talking some of the best role players, some of the best 3-and-D guys, guy who helped like define a whole subcategory of one of the most useful role players, is Shane Battier.
18 points in Game 7 in 2013.
Yeah.
To piss off Kobe Bryant fans, I think that really kind of shows how good Gasol was in those years, because I think we agree that was like probably the toughest conference ever, where you had to win 50 games to get to the AC a couple times, 48 games, something like that. And Gasol was able to lead that expansion Memphis team to 3 straight playoffs. And guys like Shane Battier was his second best player some year. Jason Williams was some years, things like that. So I always think it's funny when they always try to shit on how shitty Pau Gasol is. He never won a single playoff game. Well, he didn't really have much help in Memphis.
He had to play the Spurs again and again. Like, I'm sorry. It's him and Mike Miller and Shane Battier versus Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. We can see some of these things are not like the others. I was a long-time Pau stan beforehand. The West was just a murderer's row of power forwards in that era. Like, not even just players, but like legitimately power forwards. It's, between Duncan, Garnett, Dirk. Like, good luck making Weber. You got the last Pau starts. You got the trail end of Karl Malone, Rasheed Wallace before he goes to Detroit. Like, there were good power forwards in the West.
Elton Brand, are we calling him a power forward? Because he makes the All-Star team in 06 with Pau.
Yeah, I'd call him power forward.
Or center, depends what is he playing at the moment. He's a power forward's height at 6'8", and he's got a real long wingspan like a center.
Just got the short neck. That's what he always said. Which,
that's it.
To be fair, Pau also dabbles at center. Dirk, Duncan dabbles at center. Every one of these guys dabbles at center.
Don't you have? I know Aaron's talked about it. You have Duncan ranked as a center, like all time.
I do. Duncan came into the league. He was drafted, declared a center. You go back and rewatch the 99 finals. They talk about how him and David are 2 centers playing together. The fact that Duncan could play center and does play more minutes at center, even during his time with David Robinson, like their combo, both center power forwards together, I think is one of the greatest advantages to his career, because where a lot of the other guys kind of fall short is they need to play with another center. Duncan can play with another center, but Garnett needed to play with another center. He had to have a bigger body to handle the physicality of Shaq. Duncan did not. If you needed to go small, you could, and that's how the Spurs usually finished. And so it's an unpopular opinion. It's something we take a lot of heat for online. I kind of stopped responding to those comments, but like, it's not a knock. It's a pro for Duncan that he could play center, and a lot of the other power forwards just couldn't because of their size.
So wait, since you have him at center, then is he not the greatest power forward in your book? Is that someone else then?
Sadly, it is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oh, not sadly. My cat's name is Giannis. But if you say Duncan is the greatest power forward, I'm not going to fight you on this. Stylistically, I think he fits a lot better with centers. He anchors the team at center. The Spurs finish with him at center. It's kind of like at this point, is LeBron a small forward or is he a power forward? Because he has played a lot more of his, well, not a lot more, but he has played a lot of his time at power forward nowadays. And I still have him as a 3. I think the minutes still have him as a 3. But if someone starts, LeBron is the greatest power forward of all time. Hate it. Bird got a lot of his time power forward for the early part of his career before shifting down. Guys are flexible. What was it that Jalen Rose always says? Positions were created so a novice can understand basketball. I don't, for ranking these guys, it was really useful for us to kind of cluster similar players more so than really a knockdown, drag out fight of like, is he a 4? Is he a 5?
Well, for me, then, like I would have, and I think this is guy gets a knock, and somebody that's done a deep dive and all that. I'd like to know where you got him before we get into peaks, because to me the biggest disrespectful thing on the Bleacher Report's 100, we talked about this, was Pettit at 38. For me, I think Pettit has a legitimate. If you're not counting Duncan, then to me he has a legitimate case as the greatest power forward of all time. He keeps, he goes to the finals more time. He's literally one shot away from going back to back, and he didn't go back to back, obviously. So I'm not saying he did. He probably has the best closeout game ever with 50 and 19. He literally just kept running up against the greatest dynasty of all time. We're talking about this hoops. He's clearly in that era the third best player behind Chamberlain and Russell in terms of winning, what he can do, things like that. Because only in that era, since Russell got there, only Wilt can lead you to a title. Russell and Pettit. That's it. Not West, not Oscar, but people have Oscar and West over him. And someone like West is never the best player on a title team. He never wins an MVP. Oscar's got an MVP, never the best player on a title team. What is it you think the masses where they put these guys over a guy like Pettit, and how come you think Pettit doesn't get his credit?
Well, so let's start off with where do I have Pettit? I got Pettit 27th, so not quite as far back as Bleacher Report, not quite as high as you've got him. The first thing I would say is that I think there's a question of what do you mean by era? Pettit's career, what is it, 55 to 65?
54 to 65.
54 to 65. Jerry West is 59 to 74? 72? Right. So these guys are not overlapping quite as much.
60 to 74.
This is the start of West's career, is the end of Pettit's career. So it's a little bit like what Duncan said about him and Jokic of I played him after I was me and before he was him. Not quite. There is some overlap where they're both in their primes, but I would say that Oscar and West are part of a later era. I would say potentially a much stronger era, a more integrated era of basketball. There's a lot of still segregation in the league. There's the unwritten 3-player rule of the early 60s, late 50s. And I would say that Pettit is kind of the right guy for the job. He comes in right as the shot clock comes into play. No one had a ton of time to prep or change their game. It was a stylistic change that really worked for Pettit. But as that becomes the standard practice, the standard rule, guys are able to adapt. And I do think the league takes a seismic jump forward as the next 10 years plays out. So I would just say that Pettit is kind of left behind in a bit of an earlier era of basketball, in a similar way like George Mikan. Mikan wins 5 titles, 6 if you want to count his NBL title before he jumps to the BAA. I'm sorry, but I can't get Mikan into that top 10 where everyone else is a 5-time champion. And if MVPs had existed, which they existed in the NBL, Mikan has 5, 7 MVPs. Mikan is by far a more dominant player than Pettit, but it's just so much of a weaker era, and that I do have to hold a little bit of that against both Mikan and Pettit, and it does get stronger for those other guys.
No, I get that. I would just say though, with Mikan, that's where I separate it because there was no shot clock. Pettit played all with the shot clock. He played and beat a guy like Russell who dominated other people in expansive talent with more shot clock. That's just really where I separate it. I've met some people though that really value that because they say I can't fault anybody because that's when they were born, they can't control those things. But yeah, I never knock anybody that's got Mikan really high. I'm just saying I understand that guy's got an argument anywhere I would say anywhere from the 3rd greatest to the 30th, depending on how you rank him or whatever. Yeah, I just think Pettit though, since he played all with the history, and then like Jerry West, for example, he played half his career against West. So I would put West in the same career path as him, since that's about half his years. And that's just kind of how I look at it. But let's get into some peaks with no further delay. I just want to see somebody that ranks these guys really deep and how you guys look at it.
And he's definitely a lost guy. He's someone that probably deserves a little bit more talk. I will say the name just makes it a little bit hard to be defending good old Robert E. Lee Pettit.
Right. Yeah. Well, that was a parent's choice, you know what I mean? And that's once again, I can't knock anybody for sins of their father.
I see why he goes by Bob.
Yeah, no, definitely. We've had him on the show. He's a real humble guy, real nice guy. So we do shout out to him. So Hoop, let's get into it. You went on your best peaks. We're doing 3-year peaks.
Yeah, I did. I actually. So I know peaks. A lot of people do 3-year peaks, and we can do that. That's fine. It's probably easier. I had put together, and this is very bird's eye view. I haven't done a super deep dive. I made this list with like just the general knowledge I have of how these players performed during this time, but I did 5. But if we want to do 3, it's fine. But I did 5 because
we knew 5. That's fine.
I thought with 5, like I get LeBron James 2012 to 2016, right? Michael Jordan 89 to 93. And I'll just go off the list in order, and we can just talk about if there's people that I left off, if people should move up. But 1, I've got Michael Jordan 89 to 93. 2, I got LeBron James 2012 to 16. 3, I got Shaq 98 to 2002. Kareem, I've got 71 to 75. Russell, I got 61 to 65. Bird, I got 84 to 88. Magic, 86 to 90. Duncan, 01 to 05. Olajuwon, 93 to 97. Olajuwon was a little tough for me. I did from 93 when he hits that super high peak and makes 2 finals, wins 2 championships. And in 97 is his last first team All-NBA. But you could go a little bit before that, but you get some of the injury years and the years where he gets eliminated in the first round. So it's kind of tough with him. I got Wilt just behind him, 64 to 68. Then I got Nikola Jokic, 21 to 25. Curry, 15 to 19. Kobe, 2006 to 2010. Moses, 79 to 83. And Giannis at 15 from 2019 to 2023. I'd asked some people if there's some other people that should be on this list when I was doing lives on TikTok. And, people are throwing Russell Westbrook at me, and I'm like, no. And James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And Kawhi Leonard doesn't have enough window of like a string of healthy seasons for him to be on this list. Same thing with Dwayne Wade, really. And Russell Westbrook, just no. Some people mentioned Chris Paul, and I thought an honorable mention, but I don't think in a top 15.
So Nate, tell me what you think about your top 5 peaks and where you have Hoops's and your input on it.
So you gave me 15 in there, and I'm sorry, did I hear a Kevin Durant peak in there?
No, Kevin Durant. So
is it?
I got
think back with the
first one off the
injuries.
list. I have Giannis. I have Kevin Durant. It's the same type of thing, but I had Kevin Durant the first actually off the list because I had him in there, and then I'm like, I don't think it's higher than Giannis is. I'm not sure. I have Kevin Durant ranked all time higher than Giannis because of his whole body of work in 18 seasons. But I had Durant, I believe, 14 to 17 or 13 to 17. But in there, you've got some like the 2013 Grizzlies series. The injuries. It's kind of tough. Obviously, I think the best version of Durant is 2017 when he when he's able to play that role. But that one was tough. That was the first one off the list.
Yeah, the 5 consecutive years is such a tough thing to deal with because
and maybe I'm being a little. Maybe my criteria is a little too harsh. Maybe it should be 3.
Hey, you got to be a stickler for the rules at some point. So my top 5, if kind of looking at this beforehand, number 1 is Michael Jordan. Number 2 is LeBron James. Number 3, I think, is Shaq. And I was looking at it more for a 3-year. But that level of dominance from Shaq from 2000 into 2002, and we could even include 03 to 04, maybe even a little 05 if with the Heat. There's a reason why you get some of those ridiculous statements of if I was there instead of Kobe, which is not even that ridiculous. It's if anyone else played with Shaq, Shaq was really good at basketball. I don't know how else to explain it. The teams were employing like a dummy centers to just go out there and foul Shaq. He created a whole industry for 7-foot tall, overweight guys to just go out there and hack him. You had to physically reconstruct your roster and add in 2 more of those guys to have enough fouls to deal with Shaq in a playoff series. I think we underrate Shaq's peak so much.
I think if you told me you'd take 2000 to 2002 Shaq over Jordan or LeBron, I'd be like, probably not, but I'll hear it.
But I'll listen to it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll hear it.
Well-
Shaq too, and you're talking about like teams that have to employ big bodies, right, to throw at him. I think it's important to note that none of it works. The best, I think the team that was best built was probably the 0-2 Kings. Granted, Page is hurt. There's a reffing scandal, all of that. But still, Shaq's giving you, I think, 30 points per game in that series, 41 in game 6, 35 in game 7, fouls Wade Divac out. So even then, even with how he's bending the league and single-handedly slowing down the pace to stop him, he just can't be stopped.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say this on it too. Shaq's the only person I know, and I don't know if any of you guys can have discovered this somewhere else, but in that 2000 finals series, he's the only person I've ever known to shoot 26 times a game or more and still shoot over 60%. He averaged over 26 shots a game, and he still shot 61% at 26 shots a game. So there's that. Also, too, Kobe Bryant, in that series is 15 points on 36% shooting. He's 12 for 47 in the last 2 games, and they're still winning. Even the game he took over in the fourth quarter, Shaq scores 14 or 16 in the fourth quarter. There is no overtime.
Finals?
Yeah, game 4. He scores 14 or 16 in the fourth quarter.
He had 14 in the fourth before overtime.
Yeah.
Kobe had 4, and then Shaq had another basket in overtime, and that's when he fell.
Right.
And
then he pulled out. So that's what I'm saying. So when you see a guy getting 15 points, and I know he's Kobe Bryant, but I'm one of those big guys. At some point, the scoreboard's the scoreboard, and you can't argue the numbers at some point. You know what I mean? Just some point, it's that like, the game where Kobe scored 80 on 60% shooting. I don't need to know any context after that. I know if you drop 80 on 60%, that's going to be a contribution to the team. Just at that. That's just the fact. Scoreboards care about that. So, yeah, and the fact that Kobe's 15 points on 36% shooting, that's an inefficient sixth man. That's what Kobe was playing at that. That's what the scoreboard gave a fuck about. So when you say these things like Shaq could win, 3 straight with other players, it's not an unrealistic thing. And then I want to ask Nate what his take on this too. But I will say this: from 2000 2005, I would say McGrady's a better player overall than Kobe for those 5 years. Kobe kills him in the career. There's no argument, anything like that. But for those 5 years, I would probably rather have McGrady. And McGrady's scoring average went up every year in the playoffs. The team just didn't match what he was doing. Not only that, with his length, his defensive rebounding, his ability to average 2 blocks a game off the bench in only 31 minutes. His defensive win shares, he peaks higher than Kobe in those 5 years, and Kobe drops lower than he does in those 5 years. So with that being said, yeah, I do think that he could win it with that. But I wanted to see your take on why do you think Kobe fans are so dismissive of that? And why do you think that, because you just said Shaq could win with anybody, he was so dominant. And why do you think that they're so dismissive on this when, like I said, you've come to that realization? And why do they argue in the last 2 runs that Kobe is playing equally to Shaq when he's not?
So, I do think the gap closes. The first championship,
definitely closes.
The first championship, Kobe is very much sidekick. Second one, when he comes back from injury, is learning to play team ball. Listen, I've got a lot of Lakers propaganda in my life. I absolutely grew up, loved to death the Lakers. It's how I got into basketball. It's how I got it into sports. Like, that's out of reach. I've got a Lakers basketball right out of it. Like I
got
just
the mob mentality under me right now.
I've got Kobe high school game tape sitting in right there. So let's attack this bit by bit. The Kobe versus T-Mac thing. I think if you age adjusted, because T-Mac's 1 year younger than Kobe, and if you look at like just their 2000 seasons, yeah, Mac hasn't jumped up yet. Their 2001s. I think if you like shifted it where you said, hey, age 20 Kobe versus age 20 T-Mac, I think there is a real case that T-Mac was probably the better player. And if you flipped them in their positions and made T-Mac 1 year younger than Kobe and whatnot, he got drafted to the Lakers. I think the Lakers have similar success. Maybe not all 3, but very similar. I think Mac gets disrespected a lot because people just don't understand the context around him going to Orlando, where the team shredded contracts in a way that, like, we know about in 2010, every team dropping, trying to line up all their contracts to go after Wade, Bosch, LeBron, Amari Stoudemire, the big free agent class of 2010. We don't talk about that as much for 2003, where where Orlando really tried to line up getting 2 to 3 of Grant Hill, Jason Kidd, Tim Duncan, and Tracy McGrady. And they did. They were successful. They shredded all of their contracts. They brought in Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady, and Grant Hill never plays. McGrady wasn't supposed to be the number one offensive guy. He was supposed to be the do-everything thing. He was the Scottie Pippen. He talks about being the Scottie Pippen into Vince Carter. He was, Penny Hardaway is this guy's idol. He was going to play defense. He was going to pass. And then, he had to carry a, frankly, dog shit team. I mean, love Darrell Armstrong. That man coming out of the G League, that's rich man's Patrick Beverly. Or not G League, Continental Basketball League, Europe. He's working his ass off to have a place in the league. Most of the other Magic players are not worth the thing. Mac had to do so much, and Mac, he goes up 3-1 on the Pistons. He loses it, but he goes up 3-1 and on the Pistons the year before the title. So I think Lakers could have won with Mac. Hate to say it, but Paul Pierce and Ray Allen have also made comments about wishing they could have played next to Shaq, because then they would have won rings. This is in the interim before they all team up in Boston. They're not wrong. If you played with Shaq in the early 2000s, you probably could get a ring.
Well, Paul Pierce in particular, I think in 2002, I think that's his best case as a top 10 player in the world. He's giving you 26 points per game, third in the league in scoring. Him and Walker are actually the second highest scoring duo behind Shaq. So, if you told me that Paul Pierce could have been supplanted in that season and still win, I believe it.
Just like Grant Hill in 2000, I always thought maybe he doesn't fuck up his ankle really bad. You know what I mean? Playing with Shaq. Maybe he's not forced onto it. Maybe he doesn't have to, because, I think 2000, literally the year before, the year Grant Hill got hurt, I think that was the best Grant Hill we ever saw. He had just gotten better. You know what I mean? He had just leveled up his scoring from a 21-point-a-game guy to a 26-point-a-game guy. And he was still putting around the same number of assists and all that. I do think that now the question is like I said, because we're talking about this peak of Shaq and how dominant it is. And, I can't argue anybody, especially that 3-year peak. Why do they try to elevate Kobe? Like, we'll use the King series, for example. Kobe Bryant is 35 points a game in the King series. Shaq's 33.3. But Shaq's shooting 60%. Kobe Bryant shooting 48, 49, whatever he's shooting. First off, I would much rather take the 1.7 less points with the 60%, with the 10% gap, because now it means I have more possessions to score. It's going to take me less possessions to score, and I'm only losing 1.5 points. Then when you factor in Shaq's getting you 17 rebounds to the 9, you're not telling me 1.7 points is worth an extra 8 possessions. We should be able to score 2 points off 8 more possessions of basketball. You know what I mean? That's just the more valuable act. And they're like, well, it's the same because he's a guard doing it. I go, the scoreboard don't give a fuck he's a guard. They reward the same amount of points, whether it's from 20 foot or 2 feet. And I go, you don't understand the concept of offense. The goal of offense is that's why we have schemes, plays, and systems, so we never take a hard shot. That's the goal. So we get 2 feet shots. That's what I want in offense. So that's what I'm saying. Where is that disconnect right there where it's just I don't understand what we're arguing right now. And I don't care who's better. I'm just reporting what is.
So I think that the hive of Kobe fans, one is incredibly protective of him because he passed away. 2, we're going to bring in some Joseph Campbell hero's journey type stuff here. It's much easier to picture yourself being the Kobe. It's much easier to go out in the driveway and do, the Kobe pull-up shot or, work on those than it is to put on 300 pounds of muscle and just bulldoze through people. People cannot put themselves in Shaq's shoes. Wilt, no one roots for Goliath. It's Kobe. I think Garnett said it best when Garnett talked about how Kobe was pretty much an average dude. Kobe, 6'6". Kobe didn't have, he was athletic. Kobe was athletic for NBA standards, but
Average for
40
NBA. Average for NBA.
Yeah, above average, but not like he's not Jordan. He's not LeBron. Shaq said that Shaq was a freak, but Kobe was scientific. Kobe was a dog. Kobe worked at it. Like the whole Mamba mentality. It's much more inspirational, if you want to ask me. I can see how people can feel a much greater connection to Kobe as a person, as like someone to look towards, someone to idolize. I think that does kind of cross the blend. You had asked me on TikTok about my rankings, my matrix. I built a matrix to rank every single NBA player in NBA history. I started that in 2013 as a delusional Kobe fan because I wanted to find a way to make a case for Kobe over MJ. And all is what that's done in the last 12 years of updating this, of tweaking this, has proved that Kobe is somewhere between 8 to 12 and MJ is somewhere between 1 and 1.5. Like, but it's so easy to get swept up in how Kobe made you feel and how watching him. And then there is also the late game heroics where Shaq did struggle. That is a real part of the Shaq piece. Shaq free throws up or down. He had enough good games that he can kind of say he was right about he hits them when it matters. He also had enough bad games where we can still remember the bad games. And Kobe was the guy that got to hit the clutch shots or be heroic when it wasn't Robert Horry or Derek Fisher.
Well, can I give you a fun stat on this? And this is like the more deep dive I do because I'm going to be honest. I'm someone that likes personally. I like Kobe better than I like LeBron, right?
Yeah.
But the fandom of Kobe and the lies that they just tell, to get him somewhere he's not, it's just made me just destroy all these narratives because you know what I mean? Like it's cool to have the narrative, but now we're just getting delusional with it. Like, for example, I'm sure you guys have seen it. The only guy ever to go back to back without a top 75, right? Have you ever seen that?
Yep.
Okay, well, George Mikan won 3 straight, so then it's immediately windy play. You said only. You said he's the only to do it. Okay, so it doesn't matter when he played. So get rid of the word only. He's beat the most 50-win teams. One, that's not true. Derek Fisher has beat more. You know what I mean? Well, that's Derek Fisher. I don't care. He still holds the record. Kind of like when Donyell Marshall held the record for most threes in a game. It didn't somehow not count because it was Donyell Marshall. Scott Skiles holds the record for most assists in a game. It doesn't not count because it's Scott.
It's 30, right? 30 in the mid.
It's like 33? Yeah. It's wild that Scott's.
No, it's 30. It's 30. But the funny thing is, Brandon Jennings, like his rookie year, Scott Skiles walked up to him and he goes, hey, you know who has the record for most assists in a game? And Brandon Jennings like, I don't know, John Stockton. He goes, it's me, motherfucker. And then he just walked off. He didn't say nothing more. Like, I don't know what the point of that was, but I guess it was I played the point. I could play it well. Listen to me. That's what I took from the point. Other than that, I don't know what else the point would be. But anyways, but yeah, it doesn't not count. You know what I mean? It's Derek Fisher still has that record. And even if that was the case, Kobe, that'd still be a 5th place record because it's not the most 55 wins, not the most 60 wins, it's not the most 65, it's not the most 70. You know what I mean? So it'd be 5th place. That'd be like me flexible. Somebody else has got more wins over 45 win team. Kobe fans would think that's ridiculous. He never won a series without home court advantage after Shaq left as the man. If Kobe fans, if that happened to LeBron's won 11 without home court. You know what I mean? They lose their shit on that. And finally, with this closer shit that he is, in the 6 years that Kobe made all NBA with Shaq, right? So not the years he came off the bench, the 6 years that he was playing, closing, starting, the ball, was going through them. In those 6 years, he scored 12 more points in the 4th quarter than Shaq in 6 total years. He took 121 more shots. So Kobe being the closer, for every 10 more shots he takes than Shaq, he scores 1 more point. And you can't tell me 12 points off 121 shots is good shit. That's fucking awful. I could put up 12 points in 121 shots in the NBA.
But Tony, how's it look on the highlight reel?
That's the point. I don't give a shit about the highlight reel. That's the point. I care about winning, and that's why I base all my rankings over winning. Now, sometimes there's an exception to the rule, but ultimately, whenever we're arguing this, you're never going to be able to get around winning. You just can't. Go ahead.
I posed this question in my Discord to a couple of friends, and I asked them, would you rather or who knows more about hoops? The guy who only watches highlights or the guy who only looks at box scores? And there was an interesting kind of flipping of that where they said, well, the guy who only knows box scores probably knows more, but I'd much rather hang out with the guy that only watches highlights.
Yeah.
Right.
Kobe fans, Kyrie fans, J.R. Smith fans. A lot of the bag fandoms are the guys who only watch highlights and get very passionate about it. And you have to do some of both. You have to both live in the moment, see and experience the games. I've been doing a 50-point game series on TikTok, just going back and rewatching great 50 pieces. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
I wish, I'm not going to watch the whole game, provide commentary to the whole game, but like I go queue up a game. I'm going to try to find Antoine Jameson's 51 piece just for funsies. But
do Tony Delp when he's with the Suns and he drops like 51 or 53 against the
I
team.
can only find the second half on YouTube. I've been looking for it. If you find it, shoot it my way. I'd love to watch it. But
watching it live, I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Right?
I couldn't believe it watching it live.
Right?
I have a question, and it's a little bit off topic, but I'm curious about this because I think we all have Magic ranked higher than Bird. Obviously, the longevity, the more winning, all of that. Just a little bit more longevity, a bit more winning, the 2-1 record with I think similarly talented teams. But whose peak is better? Because I think I have Bird ranked just ahead of Magic, and I had even if we want to do 3 years, Bird 84 to 86, he's still giving you like basically 27, 10, and 7 on close to 50, 40, 90. If you go out to 5, it's basically 50, 40, 90. Magic's like 22, 12, 50%. He's not a strong 3-point shooter at that point, or he's not shooting in volume like he does later on. But he's still that's 2 MVPs. That's 3 championships, right? And 2 finals MVPs or 1 finals MVP. So like whose peak is better? Because I think it's Bird's, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I think you got it right. I mean, if we're doing 3 or 5 years, either way, Bird gets the 3 straight MVPs. Or is it 3 and 4 years?
He wins 3 straight MVPs. He makes 4 straight finals. From 84 to 87.
Yeah,
and he's first or second in MVP 8 out of 9 years, and the 1 year that he wasn't, he was 3rd.
Yeah. The thing with Bird is really he comes to the league late. He's a super senior basically, and then with the back injuries, it cuts him short. Magic comes in. Is it after sophomore? I should really know this. I went to MSU. Yeah. I walk past that statue all the time. So after sophomore year,
I think it's awesome.
Like he gets to play more. He also gets to be on a bit better of a team, or he gets. I don't know. They both have really great teams. It's.
Well, let me ask you this: during Bird's run, who would you say his second best player is overall? Because obviously Magic's is Kareem. Who's his second best player? Would you say Bird's?
Bird shifts though. That's the thing is Bird keeps, I think if you look at some of the earliest years, Parrish is kind of Parrish is stable, but he's not great, and he's stable consistently throughout. McHale really peaks during the back half, like 85 to 90. He's got Tiny Archibald, he's got Dennis Johnson, and he's got a good rotating cast of like guys who could be the second best guy, as opposed to Magic, whom for most of his career it is Kareem, then James Worthy, but like there's 2 kind of eras. I think Bird has more of a complete team all around him with less weak points, but not as consistent of a second guy.
So who overall would you just give the second to? Like,
it's tough because McHale's not even starting.
Well, I know that's why I want him in on this because he does all these deep ass rankings. So who would you give it overall?
Oh, man, I truly hate the McHale rankings. I feel like McHale, because he's got the 1,000 moves, he gets overrated by everyone's dad.
It's like the Kyrie of power forward.
And he's really just got 3 moves with various counters of the 3 moves.
Yes, he is the Kyrie of everyone's dad or uncle. Yeah, the big man. Parrish never hits the peak, but I love Parrish. Can I say Dennis Johnson? Is that crazy?
If you want to.
I mean,
Finals MVP.
But not with Bird.
Yeah, I know he's an
Yeah.
all-star with the Celtics. I think 1 or 2 years.
I think you maybe have to say Mikhail is the second best, but it's
Well, my point is this, and this is the point that I said that really separates Magic. And I don't knock him because it's out of Magic's control, and this is why I think Magic is over him. But you look at Magic, he gets Riley, and Bird doesn't have Riley. And Riley's a Mount Rushmore coach. Then you look at his second best player is a 6-time MVP in Kareem, and Bird's second best, Mikhail, primarily comes off the bench for his career. And I just think that's really a big difference.
Is there a scenario, and this is a little off topic with peaks, but it kind of gets into all-time rankings. I think you said you had Bird at 8, Nate. That's about where I have him. I have Durant, I believe, at 14, but Durant's still playing, and he's still playing well, and he's still so good. Is there a scenario in which Durant becomes because we're saying LeBron's the best small forward, the second best small forward of all time? Like, what would he need to do? He obviously need to win with the Rockets, right? Or at least a deep playoff run or something, because he has got the longevity. He doesn't have the MVPs. He's got 2 Finals MVPs already, just like Bird does. But those 2 Warriors teams, it's kind of hard because he's not definitively the guy like Bird is. But is there a scenario in which you could see, okay, I can hear an argument for Kevin Durant over Bird?
I mean, I think you outlined it right there. If he wins with the Rockets, which feels like a really hard, tough bar at this point to say, like, hey, you now at age, 35, 30?
Oh, 36, 37. Yeah.
He'll be he'll turn 37 in September. He's born, September of 88?
37.
Okay, so at 37, you now need to lead your team. Like, that is not a thing that many people have done in the history of the sports. But part of me feels like he forfeited it. He had the teams. He had the chances. He chose to go join up with Golden State, which I do think gets downplayed. He is incredible for those Golden State teams, and we don't fully appreciate that because of how good they were. Gosh, what year? We did the 2019, top 10 of 2019. And, Aaron has long maintained the stance that the best player in the 2019 season is James Harden. And so we're kind of talking through how to make that happen, or what was the argument for that, even though they lose to a Durantless Warriors. And I'm like, the argument is the Warriors. The argument is it was unfair that Durant joined the Warriors because this was how good the Warriors are. If the Warriors lose that series, it proves the opposite. It proves Durant was cool with joining them. But no, the Warriors are so good. They beat an awesome Houston team, and they sweep Dame Lillard and the Blazers, and then they're in a dogfight with the Raptors. First, they get Durant back. He goes back down. Clay gets hurt. Like, a lot of stuff has to go wrong for that team to go to lose.
Yeah, Durant has like 11 points before he tears his Achilles, and then
like 3 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, Clay misses the game and then goes out at the end of Game 6. I think the Raptors are ahead by the time. I think they've got it sewn up by the time Clay goes down, but he still misses a game.
Yeah,
and even Boogie got hurt in that playoff run too.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's 3/5 of your starting lineup. I'm really big on that. Like the 06 Suns, by the time they got to the conference finals, every game Raja Bell could finish, they won in the conference finals. And every game he couldn't, they lost. And that was like the third of the 3/5 of their starting lineup they're missing. That's just really hard to come. I've actually been wanting to do a series on that. Like the best teams that didn't win, basically circumstances out of their control. You know what I mean? Maybe they weren't necessarily the worst team, just circumstances that they couldn't avoid.
I will tell you, I did. It was a TikTok series a really, really long time ago. I called it the Honor Ring. It was the honorary ring, and I took 8 of the best teams from the West and 8 of the best teams from the East from a decade that did not win. And the rules were you couldn't have won with like the same core. It's like the 04 Lakers ineligible because the 02 Lakers had won, so it doesn't matter that they kind of different teams. But like the 2002 Kings. I just put them in a bracket and I made a little video and was like, hey, here's the matchup. 02 Kings versus 09 Rockets. If Rockets, if these teams don't get injured, if Kings, if these guys, and tried to sort out, who deserved honorary rings for these things. And, I think we focus too much on just the champions. Championship's super important. It matters who wins. It matters who comes up at the right moments. But
So who won?
Impact on winning and leading your team to a title aren't mutually inclusive.
Yes. Yeah. The 09 Rockets, where we said if Yao and T-Mac don't go down, they still push the Lakers. There's to 7 without Yao and T-Mac.
Which Lakers team?
The Kobe Pau team.
Oh, okay.
Well, they went to 7, and McGrady was out, and Yao was out, and they still went to 7.
It's like Shane Battier and Carl Landry.
We're talking about that year when they go when they go to 7. Okay.
Yeah. They beat out the 0-2 Kings in the West Finals. I forget who came out of the East. I think it was the Magic, the 08 Magic.
Well, it's kind of like if you look at the 07 Suns, and I don't know if these change or not, but 07 game 1, the Nash bloody nose, and then he comes back in, he'll take the lead, he'll tie, they can't stop it, they go back, he goes out, they lose the lead, they lose that one. Game 2, they blow him out by Game 2, they blow him out. The Suns win by a blow. Game 3, the refs betting against them and goes to prison for it. Game 4, they went on the road. Game 5, they lose by 3 with suspensions. And Game 6, the Spurs just legitimately won. But out of that 6 games, that's the only one where the Spurs legitimately won. Like nothing, they were clearly just better than the Suns in that game. So like to me, that 07 Suns hold a lot of weight because they lost to the champs, and the champs legitimately beat them 1 time out of 6 games. Just bad luck, bad situations, and that's just, you got to think about it. We have an injury, we have suspensions, and we have the ref fixing games against us. It's hard to overcome.
Just to go back to the piece, because I'm kind of between we're saying Bird over Magic for just peak 3-5 years. Duncan, because I was on Kev Loves NBA Live, and he thought Duncan peaked higher than Magic. I don't think so. But 03 is so good, but I'm not sure. I have Tim Duncan just behind Magic, and I still think Magic peaks higher than Duncan.
Yeah, the peak has never been the argument for Duncan, as good as he was. Duncan's thing is stability and consistency, and his ability to be the defensive anchor and keep the offense moving and not become all encompassing. When you read out some of the peaks, you started with 88 Jordan to 92, and I'm like, I don't like some of those earlier Jordan years where yes, he is statistically better, he is scoring a lot more points, but that hurts his team at times. And same with young Kobe. And this is the thing that a lot of young Kobe fans miss, is when Kobe had some of those insane scoring games, he took the ball out of Shaq's hands, they ran less efficient offense, and it hurt the team. And Kobe would have a great game, and then Phil would go to the media and be like, "Yeah, we lost this night because Kobe didn't play team ball." Duncan always played team ball, and that's why we never see quite as high of a peak where it's like Duncan just lighting things on fire. But I would certainly,
other than 03, really, it's not. There's no there's no more. There's not more than one Terminator type season.
Yeah,
I think.
I would go Jokic over Duncan for peak at this point.
Yeah, and Elijah one too, probably.
Yeah, and I'm hit or miss on Elijah one. He's one of there's the 12 guys that everyone has in their top 10. And Elijah one is one of the guys outside of mine. So he's the one that I get asked to answer for the most. And I'm just like, Can
you actually, because you're in the space a lot, there seems to be an Elijah one renaissance, which is weird for a community, I think, on TikTok and online in general, that has has I think a general consensus that players now are quote unquote better and the game's quote unquote more evolved, but everybody seems to really like Elijah one. I know some people that have him in their top 5. I can't get anywhere near there. But I can hear top 10, top 9, maybe 8, I guess, is pushing it for me, I think, because you get those 3 years. I know Tony has some arguments, good arguments for him in the earlier years where he's kind of that black hole offensively, and he's not playmaking enough, but he's still defensively getting you 6 blocks a game in that Lakers series and all that. But I'm wondering, why do you think Elijah one's had such a renaissance? I think in the online space.
I think it's because they can see his game translate into the modern era.
Yeah.
Like it's a little bit hard to go back and watch a Shaq and be like, hey, how is this going to work in today's pace and today's shooting? And my answer is great. Shaq was great at kicking out to 3-point shooters. If you're going to give him more spacing, if you're going to give Shaq more spacing, it's going to be great. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Tony. Hakeem, you watch him move, and you're like, oh yeah, he's got the fluidity. Jordan called him a shooting guard in a center's body.
Yeah.
There's the two-way impact. There's the idea that he gets robbed of depoys. But a lot of it also kind of misses the mark that, like you said, he was a black hole. It's not until Rudy Tomjanovich comes in and they kind of unlock the idea that, hey, when you shoot a lot of threes, it spaces the floor better, which now gives him more room to do these post moves. He cuts down turnovers. He increases his passing. That really unlocks Hakeem. And maybe if he got Rudy T earlier in his career, we get more of a peak of an impact. The other thing is this notion that he wins 2 titles without all-star teammates. I'm sorry, Otis Thorpe was an all-star in 92, so he had a guy who was an all-star 2 years prior, and then they trade for Drexler at the deadline, who is not an all-star that year because of player tanking, but he's all NBA. He drops 40 points in a closeout game to win in the first round.
I think 21, 10, and 5 that whole run, something like that.
Yeah, Drexler led the Blazers to 2 finals. Like, what are we doing here? Drexler's a top 50 all-time guy. Like, let's not pretend that he doesn't have anyone else. I really like Hakeem, but as Tony has said a number of times, the numbers just aren't numbering. The scoring efficiency is nowhere near Shaq, but people will point to the fact that he swept Shaq to say that he should be over Shaq, and I'm like, the Rockets swept the Magic. Shaq was really good that series.
That was funny.
Penny's not bad, but this is second year Shaq, third year Shaq. It's 94. Like
third year Shaq. Second
year.
He's
giving you 28, 12, and 6 or something like that. I think 28, 13, and 9 that first game where Dennis Scott misses the free throws or Nick Anderson.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I would say this though on it, because I'm a big and if you ever want to hear we can do it off camera if you want, but I can give you my reasons why I got Hakeem over Kobe. And
okay.
But as far as the Otis Thorpe thing goes, like I get Otis Thorpe was an all-star 2 years prior, but he wasn't that year. He was 14 and 11 on 36 minutes. No, remember 14-11 is cool, but 14-11, that's one of those things you need to be winning to be considered for an all-star team. Because 14-11 is just not, you don't think of those as one of the 24 best players. And then when you look at the and then it goes into the playoffs, he drops down to 11 and 10 in 37 minutes. I don't think an all-star player should be dropped. Minutes go up, and he's dropping everywhere. I just don't think 11 and 10 in 37 minutes is an all-star level guy, especially unless you're giving like great rim protection, you're giving great passing. Like it's just really like he's an efficient scorer when he gets his shots in the post, and he's a good rebounder, and that's about it. Now 95, obviously Clyde Drexler is one of the best players in the league at the time. He's top 10 somewhere right around there. However, in the regular season, once they got Clyde, they were the 4th seed. When they traded for him, they dropped to the 6th. So it wasn't even meshing with Clyde Drexler, and then we take off. So, and I'll say this, I don't know if you value my basketball opinion, can or can't, but I've been watching basketball now for about 35 years, and I really remember it really well for the last 33. The 92 finals is where I really start remember a continuous stream of no gaps. I watched Jordan average 41 in the finals. I watched Shaq do that 38-17. And 95 Hakeem is the best player I've ever seen play basketball. He is the best player I've ever seen play basketball. I've never seen. So 1 year peak, I always argue he's the best. He looks the most conducive to winning, especially when you factor in they had the hardest road by far. You know what I mean? They by far have the greatest championship because when you factor in nobody's ever won 4 rounds on the road. That's just him, since he's the leader. We'll give him the credit. Nobody ever won beating the teams with the top 4 records in the league. He beat all 4. Beat every team with a 55 wins or more, and beat an MVP still playing at an all-NBA level every single round. Not one of those things has happened once. For all 4 of those to happen in one run is 1 in 645,000. That's what chance he had to win that title.
It is probably the most impressive finals run of all time.
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, just run through the championship. It also still requires a 40-point game from Drexler in a closeout. None of that changes. Is those factors. We talk colloquially when we say an all-star teammate. Do we mean a guy that was on the all-star team that year, or a guy who has been an all-star or before?
Yeah, it's like Kyrie Irving technically is an all-star in 2016.
Well, and you get some guys who like make the all-star team, and we're like, D'Angelo Russell, are we really going to call him an all-star for the rest of his career? Are we really going to do that? But I will also say, if we're talking the 94 run, one of the things that I hate is this cross-comparing of eras, where we say, like, LeBron had X amount of teammates help. Hakeem didn't have any all-stars. Who did Hakeem play against? How much all-star help was there? And in some cases, when he plays Utah, you got 2 top 50 all-time guys there, or wherever you land on Stockton, top 60.
You've got to be top 50.
The people have Stockton up. I
think he's.
I have him at 52.
Yeah, I would say around top 50.
Yeah. But either way, you play Barkley and the Suns. He plays Barkley and the Suns one of these rounds, right?
Yeah, he plays
both games.
It's a 7-game series. I think both
seasons.
Both seasons a 7-game series. That Utah Jazz team did win 60 games, by the way, I think.
So two top 50 guys, Kevin Johnson, Charles Barkley. You got a top 30 guy in Chuck, and I would say top of 90, top 100 guy in Kevin Johnson, another guy that's often forgotten about. So he's beating teams with more help than what he has in Otis Thorpe. But it's not like leagues more. Whereas when we look at LeBron, we say he's got Kyrie, he's got Kevin Love. He went up against a team with Durant, Curry. So you always got to compare who your teammates are and who you're playing against versus who your teammates are and who another guy's teammates are. And I think that people doing the kind of cross-era comparison does help inflate him, because they look at how weak his teams were, how weak his teammates were, without always looking at, Utah's starting Greg Foster or Greg Ostertag. The Knicks, it's Patrick Ewing, but then his second best players are John Starks and
Charles
Oakley.
But Starks is an all-star that year.
And so is Charles Oakley.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between Oakley and Otis Thorpe, though, it's marginal. Oakley's better. We're not going to sit here and say Oakley's not.
Starks is also absolutely disastrous in that game 7.
Yeah.
Right. But I will say this, too. When we look at it, and I've never seen, and maybe you can think of another one, he holds Ewing in that finals to 18 points on 36% shooting.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just a complete shutdown of Ewing.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just never seen
shuts down David Robinson. So much so that get David Robinson out of your top 20, out of your top 30. This man is no. I hate the David Robinson over Love.
Bleacher Report had him get ranked ahead of Giannis, and I'm like, why? Why?
Yeah, see, I don't know that. See,
what has David Robinson done that Giannis that puts him ahead of Giannis, who was 50 points in a finals?
Yeah, generally speaking, I start all mine like whenever I do my rankings. You got to start off greatness is leading your team to a title. That's the first group, and then I break up that group, and then we move on to the next group. But you got to lead your team to. I'm not going to put Robinson over any, like, for example, Bob Pettit. I can never get Robinson over a guy like Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit can lead you to a title. Robinson can't. Robinson has MVPs, so does Pettit. But Pettit has more MVPs.
Yeah, I think the two most valuable things in basketball are leading a team to a title and an MVP. And I will say, one of the things I also hate is when you see someone put Isaiah Thomas up super high. And it's like, well, Thomas led his team to a finals and beat Bird, Magic, and Jordan. I'm like, well, no, he was the best player on the Bad Boys. But there's a reason why Joe Dumars walks away with a finals MVP. There's a reason why in those seasons Joe Dumars picks up more accolades. Thomas has a better career, better body of work, but like those Pistons teams are closer to the 04 Pistons title team than they are any of the Jordan teams as far as like, one player's usage. It's you got to have a balance.
My pushback, because I'm someone that thinks Isaiah's got an argument for like, in that 15 to 20 range. He is the best player on 2 title teams. And the reason why is you look at his peaks, like he's still, at his peak, he's 21 and 14 assists, right? Very few people ever put up that type of production. That's a shitload of production. We go with there. Then we look at in those 2 runs, right? He scales it back for team ball, like we were talking about the Kobe thing, playing Duncan thing, the system thing. Then we look at like on one ankle, I can set the record for most points in a finals. Joe Dumars can never do no shit like that, especially on no one fucking leg. Then we factor in like we could have gone 3 straight and we didn't do it, but like you look at things like I got the ankle injury that's out of my control, and then during the last shot in Game 7 and 8, the fans stormed the fucking court while we're still playing the game. You know what I mean? That shit should have been a redo. That's bullshit when we go with that. And then we look at like the 95. He jumps up to 28 again. He's averaging. So he can still put up those numbers when he wants to. He just doesn't for the sake of team ball. And Joe Dumars can never do that.
I don't know that he could if you. So I think a lot of that's overblown. I mean, Isaiah Thomas at his peak is 22.9 points per game. 90s, his regular season, he's 18.4. We've dropped 5 points. We've also seen the pace massively slow between in the mid 80s and the 90s. He's going from attempting, really, he's got one season at 19 shots per game.
Yeah.
90s season, he's averaging 16. Basically every other year of his career, it's somewhere between 17 and a half and 16. And like Bill Simmons wrote a wonderful propaganda piece on how much, which is the secret of basketball, and how much he gave back. Sure, Joe Dumars can't score like Isaiah. Isaiah can't defend Michael Jordan like Joe Dumars and like the rest of the team. I mean, there's a reason why the Bad Boy Pistons, we've done the top 500. They've got like 7 guys in there who are between Isaiah, Joe, Dantley, Bill Laimbeer, Buddha, James Edwards, Mark. Well, Aguirre wasn't on the.
He wasn't. Yeah,
title.
he came in. Sure.
Yeah, because he got traded for Dantley.
You get one. You get one of Aguirre.
He got traded for Dan. Yeah.
For Dantley. And Dave Rob. Not Dave Rob. I can't speak anymore. It's way past my bedtime. Dennis Rodman. You've got so many great guys is on this roster, and I think when you put Isaiah into that conversation, Isaiah's highest MVP finish was 5th place. Like this man was not an MVP candidate. This just seriously never was on that level of these things. He gets 3 All NBA first teams years before the titles. It's just not in my opinion. You can go back and rewatch the 90s finals. I did that over this last year. And you've got games where they're leaving him on the bench because Vinnie Johnson is cooking. Crucial 4th quarter minutes. That's where, we got this going. We've got a really good squad. Vinny, that was the other guy. And that's not to take away from him. He's just not in that threshold, in my mind, of the like Giannis where you can be the MVP and the champion and like the guy that does both.
No. I'm not saying like that, but I'm just saying once you get to like for example, I don't understand like Havlicek, right? Havlicek can lead you to titles over West, right? People got West over him. Dr. J can't lead you to a title, in the NBA whatsoever. We look at the ABA. The ABA is an inferior league. Top 3-4 guys.
I would push back on that.
Let's hear it.
So the ABA certainly starts off as an inferior league. If you look at, they're getting anybody that ever had a cup of tea in the NBA. Right. By 75, 76, the talent's so diluted in the NBA. You've gone from a league that had 9 teams before the start of the NBA or start of the ABA to now they're mass producing teams. You also have the ABA mass producing teams, and the ABA is stealing top draft talent. David Thompson was the number 1 NBA draft pick. He goes to the ABA. You get to the first year post merger, you have it's like a 60-40 split of the all NBA guys are ABA guys and NBA guys are things. And one of the things that people like to point out is that the ABA guys have a significant drop off post merger. So do a lot of NBA guys. And a lot of that comes from the talent condensing because you've dropped out extra teams. So now you've got more good players who are forced into new situations. And for the ABA guys, a lot more of them had to relocate to different teams than the NBA guys. So they're now coming into a team that already has a star and figuring things out. Like you look at Julius's stats, they have a significant drop those first 2 years in the NBA, maybe even the third, but then bounce back up out of nowhere. Players usually don't get significantly better in their like 30. Like usually you got that trend up and then they go down.
Right.
You don't go up and down
it's called a bell curve, is what
I
you're saying.
I want to piggyback on that point too. Is that the Nuggets team that Dr. J beats in the finals the year before, the ABA finals, they port basically directly over the NBA, and they're a 50-win team. So like they're still competitive is the point I'm trying to make, because it's pretty much I think the same exact team that just ports over, but they're not a 60-win team like they are the year before.
Here's my biggest thing on it, and then you tell me what you think about this, because this is how I look at it, and this is the argument whenever we get to the ABA that nobody can really beat. Well, you look at how they had the all-time ABA team, right? Where it was like 30 players.
Yeah, which is way too many players for a league that lasted like 8 years.
Well, basically though, but it lasted 9 years and 30 players. So basically, roughly the top 3 players every year. You know what I mean? Is what it came down to.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you look at that, top 30. Marvin Barnes doesn't amount to shit. Zelmo Beatty doesn't amount to shit. Ron Boone doesn't amount to shit. Roger Brown doesn't amount to shit. Matt Calvin doesn't amount to shit. Daryl Carrier doesn't amount to shit. Louis Dampier doesn't amount to shit. Mel Daniels, you know what I mean? But doesn't really amount to shit. Donnie Freeman doesn't amount to shit. Hold on, wait. But this is where it keeps getting better. Warren Jabali doesn't amount to shit. Jimmy Jones doesn't amount to shit. Freddie Lewis doesn't amount to shit. Doug Moe doesn't amount to shit. Bob Nedolicki doesn't amount to shit. Billy Paulks doesn't amount to shit. James Silence doesn't amount to shit. Willie Wise doesn't amount to shit. So think of it like this. If the NBA got absorbed by another league, their top 75 all played at once, went to another league, and half of them didn't amount to shit, would you still value the NBA as much as you value that other league?
So that's a really bad faith argument.
Why is it?
Because when Mel Daniels goes to the NBA, he's at the tail end of his career. His body's falling apart. Doug Moe was banned from the NBA due to a college betting scandal. So by the time he gets to the ABA, he's significantly older. So like a lot of these guys, you're not getting them at their primes. You're not porting them over. This is not the idea that all of the NBA's top 75 are at their prime, at their peaks, going to another league. That's a really bad faith way to look at this.
Well, I guess with this, let's go Mel Daniels, right? He's 30 the last year of the ABA, right?
Which is entirely different than 30 today.
I'm not saying that it's entirely different, but were there guys still 30?
I am saying it is entirely different. And with his body breaking down.
I thought Mel Daniels played in another league after. I can't remember.
No, he went to another league after he did, and then he went off there. But he didn't go to the NBA. Right. But I'm saying at 32 for an all-time, should he be worth more than 3 points a game? Because that was him in the NBA.
No, his body was
Mel Daniels at 32
down.
be worth more than 3. Huh?
No, his body was completely broken down.
Right. Okay.
There's
what about
health and injury history? You got guys like George McGinnis. George McGinnis comes over from the ABA to the NBA, and the first year he's 5th place in the MVP. He then suffered some ankle and knee injuries. I believe.
Poor Portland Trailblazers fans.
But George McGinnis blows out his leg. He's never the same. And people will look at that and say, look at how much he dropped. First year, 5th place in MVP. That's a pretty similar port over or from one to the other. You've got your guy, Rick Barry, who jumped from NBA to ABA to NBA. Similar stat line, crossed both leagues.
That's top 3, 4. I'm talking about that. I'm totally with guys like Rick Barry, George. I'm not saying that there's not, that. That's why I said about top 3, 4 guys, NBA talent, totally. Then they really start dropping off like that. For example, Robert Horry, right? 2005 game.
Wait.
He's on the. Okay.
You said top 75 of NBA history. That's 75 players for 75 years. You take the top 8 or 9 from ABA history. It's not my fault that they decided to recognize everybody. That they decided to recognize Spencer Haywood, who plays 1 year in the ABA, should not be in the all ABA history, or greatest ABA players, goes to the NBA, very successful career. Not like what we saw that first year of the ABA, where the league is definitely weaker.
He has a drug problem too. By the time he gets to the Lakers,
Marvin Bad News Barnes has a horrible drug problem.
David
Also,
Thomas.
Right. But once again, but then we go horrible drug problem in the ABA. I'm 24-11. Horrible drug problem in the NBA. I'm 9 points a game and 4
Mhm.
rebounds.
Mm-hmm.
So
What do
that,
you know
that
about the
just
difference
shows
in
the difference
contract
in talent.
structure?
Huh?
What do you know about the difference in contract structure?
I don't know the difference in contract structure.
ABA players were, I forget what they called it. ABA players were paid with an annuity. They were told,
Mhm.
"Hey, we're going to give you 200,000." They signed. They don't have lawyers. Very predatory league. Lots of
Right.
problems with it. But they weren't given that money. They were given like 40
Mhm.
grand, and told like, "Hey, this is your money. You know, you'll get it when you're older. You'll get it in this
Mhm.
annuity installment payments." You come to the
Mhm.
NBA, you get real money. You
Mhm.
get real money. You get real drugs. It's
Right.
just, you know, you can afford a lot more drugs. That's why
Well, here,
drug
I'm gonna
problems
be
get a lot
honest with
worse
you.
when you come to the
So
NBA.
I'm going to be honest with you. So I'm someone that's a felon and been incarcerated for drug dealing. So I know all about drugs. And really,
Mhm.
it's not that you get better drugs. You just buy more when they're shittier.
Exactly. You get more drugs if you have, you know,
Less
that's
money. You have the less money you have, you buy more drugs because they're shittier because you can't figure the good drugs. So to be honest with you, the higher drug level, if making more money, you should be acting better because you're putting less shit and it's less mixed with less chemicals and poison.
I think if you get more money, so much so that you are on the phone with NBA reporters and you walk away to do a drug deal, I think you're underestimating in the historical context surrounding these situations.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying I just watched it since growing up. You know what I mean? You get better drugs. You know what I mean? Like when you have more money and all that. But it's not even that, you know. And then it's just things like Matt Calvin. You know, he goes from 19 a game to 9, and there's just a whole bunch. You know, he's what, mid-20s. So we can do some bad faith arguments where some of these guys, but some of these guys are in their prime nonstop. And I'm just saying, and there's just a constant dip.
Look at the guys that are all NBA and all ABA the years prior to the merger. Use that as your jumping off point. The guys who are good the year prior, not the guys who are trailing down, not the guys who are you know, nearly out of the league, like Mel Daniels.
Mhm.
And what you'll see is the next year in the NBA in 77, it's about a 60-40 split, where most, or, you know, the NBA still has more talent. They're a bigger league. They had more teams. But the ABA still is contributing a lot to the All-Star game, a lot to the All-NBA game. And
well, that's where those top guys come in. That's what I'm saying. Like, and this was the point I was going to make about like Robert Horry, right? Robert Horry, 05. Where would you rank him in that series with Duncan, Ginobili, Parker? I'm just talking like terms of Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, Bowen, you know, Billups, Wallace, the other Wallace, Hamilton, Tayshaun Prince, Antonio McDyess. Where would you say he is in like the numbers of whatever? Would you say he's the 10th best player in that series? The 8th? You know,
somewhere in there, somewhere 8th, 10th. I will say that I made my first sports gambling win betting that he was going to hit that 3.
I got you. So what I was going to say is, though, you look at like someone Robert Horry, he's the best player in Game 5, right? Because that's what the 10th best player of an NBA talent level can do on the floor. He can be the best player in a finals game, as opposed to the ABA, their 10th best player can't make the league.
There's a lot of ABA guys who make the league because of the 10th guy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking like generally. That's where the talent. Would you agree? I mean, if you drop so significant from 3 to 4, like the third, fourth best player on the team.
If you want to say the NBA had deeper talent at the role players as a more established league with more established ways to pay role players, yeah, I could agree that the NBA role player talent is better than the ABA role player talent. But if we're talking about like the peak guys, the top guys, which is where I thought the conversation was, I apologize if that wasn't where this conversation was at.
No. That's been my argument. Like the top 3, 4 guys, I'm with that. But then I'm saying it significantly drops off. So I only have to play 2 or 3 other guys on the other team that are at my level, you know, NBA level, as opposed to now I have to play 12 guys at the NBA level when the merger happens.
I would say that the NBA also has fewer guys at that level during that time because the ABA is stealing. You know, if you take like an NBA roster and ABA roster and blend them, they're both kicking guys out of the league. The NBA guy, you're kicking out guys from the NBA roster, you're kicking out guys from the ABA roster, and that's why the league gets stronger in the 80s. That's why some of those late 70s titles are You've made the point, and I listened to your last pod where you're talking about Rick Barry's team and how he won a title, averaging 40 points with a bunch of other guys. You know, Jamal Wilkes is his second best guy. That's only possible because the ABA has stolen so much talent. Otherwise, these teams would all be better. Otherwise, there would be better players coming in, second, third for their own teams. These things are symbiotic. If you've got really strong talent in the ABA, that's going to mean weaker talent in the NBA.
I'm not saying we're out, but here's the difference. This is what I mean by the inferior league. So we'll use 75, 76, like you said, right? So I pulled it up. So Dave Count, these are the two teams. Dave Counts, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We admit they're great in the NBA, right?
Great in the NBA.
Yeah, cool. Rick Barry, Havlicek, George McGinnis, Elvin Hayes, Archibald, Phil Smith, Randy Smith, Maravich, right? All good NBA players, right? Okay, so the ABA that year, Ralph Simpson, not really a good NBA player. James Silas, not really good NBA player. I'm talking like all NBA level. Don Buse isn't. Billy Knight isn't. So we go with that 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 10. So 40% of their all ABA isn't all NBA level, all NBA, but the NBA is still, batting about 100%. These guys are still getting 20 points a game, as opposed to 40% of these guys couldn't do it. And that's what I mean by where the drop off is. Top 6 guys, absolutely. Top 10, that's what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, like, that depth really affects the league.
You had Bob McAdoo on your show, right? You're a McAdoo guy.
I like McAdoo. I mean, I'm a fan of everybody. You know what I mean? I appreciate what he's done. I'm just not going to pump it up to something that ain't.
Mac drops off. Same time merger happens. Why does Mac drop off? Same time merger happens.
Well, I would say the influence of talent.
The influence of talent, also injuries. Mac has a disproportionate drop off that is not just described by the talent. James Silas, one of the guys that you brought up, goes from 24 points, 5 assists, 2 steals, getting an MVP vote, All-Star in the ABA, to playing 22 games, 16 minutes because of injuries, not because of lack of talent. He comes back, and by age 31, he gets an MVP vote in the NBA. Like he battles injuries for 2 years. He works his way back into the league. Sometimes it's not just as simple as saying this guy was bad the next year. And I think there's way too much of that. And
No. I'm not saying. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying there's way too many guys where it's just a consistent pattern. It's like, so half of us got injured, half of us phased out, half of us this, half of us that. And like with McAdoo too, right? Like McAdoo's what, 35 and 14 with the influx of talent. He's still what, 27 and 13 or something like that. 26 and 13, 25 and 12. I mean, he's still putting up great numbers. That's what I'm saying. It just doesn't drop off a cliff like some of these players. You went from all NBA to 9 a game. You went from, 24 and 11, to where, like you said, the drug problem was a problem in the ABA, but now it's a problem in the NBA because there's more talent in it. You just can't dominate, because then when the backups come in, they're still all NBA talent. They're still NBA talent as opposed to not being NBA talent. I think that's the difference, is what I'm saying. 1 through 12 is NBA talent. 1 through 3 or 4 is really NBA talent in the ABA. That's really the difference to me, and that's where it makes it an inferior league. If it was 1 through 12, I'd give it to them. It's not.
I would say the NBA is not 1 through 12 either. The NBA at this time is 1 through 8. That's why a lot of these rosters are weaker. You want to say they got a little bit more depth in the role players? Fine.
Right. I'm with you on that. I'm still with you on that. So, but that's what I mean. So 1 through 8 is different than 1 through 4. And that's just why I just don't view it the same, like with the ABA, because there's a reason why Dr. J can get 2 out of 3, but then when you go to the NBA, he just can't lead you to a title.
He does. He does lead the 76ers to a title.
No, Moses does.
No. Moses is good, but that's Dr. J's team.
All I know is like with the scoreboard and affecting winning, Moses is the major reason why they. Would you disagree?
I would disagree.
Oh man, we got to get into it. We're running late. We're gonna have to come back, Nate. We're gonna have to have some
to do this again.
We're gonna have to have some back and forth on this, but I'm excited for this, especially a man that's gone into depth view. That's it. We're out of time. Nate, tell them where they can find you, where they can check out more of your content.
Nate_Hoops TikTok, YouTube, Hoops Temple podcast on wherever you want to get your podcasts. Drop us a line.
Check out his content. It's really good. Other than that, we're out. So make sure y'all bless the ones who broke you, because they're the ones who built you. And on that note, we're out. As soon as I can get this to work, well, then we're out.
Don't you hate that?
Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.